Hello, everyone. Welcome to Down the Rabbit Hole and our paranormal podcast. And so we've been away for a couple of weeks because everybody got busy, and we were going to do this show, which is Spike Island, the haunting of Spike Island, in conjunction with our annual Haunted Ireland show that we do around St. Patrick's Day. So we're a little bit late, but we're still staying in the theme. We're still going to do Spike Island because it's such a cool place, and Ian brought it up at the last show. So today's show, this is what we're talking about. So we are talking about Spike Island and all of the cool things that Spike Island is. So do we want to start with just talking about Spike Island in general? Because it's been so many things over the years, right? I'll run through the history briefly, and then we'll kind of talk about it. So Spike Island is a place that started out in 635 AD as, and I may butcher this because my Gaelic of the Irish format is not great. My Scottish is a little better, but it was Saint Mucada who founded the monastery on the island. So I don't think he was probably a saint at the time. Okay. Mochada, I'm not even sure how we pronounce that, but as I said, but it was known as St. Thomas's Abbey, or it was at least the grant was provided by St. Thomas's Abbey in Dublin to set up the Church of St. Lucian on Spike Island. So it starts out in 635 AD as a monastery. And then by the Middle Ages in 1178, it's given a grant by the St. Thomas's Abbey to build a church on Spike Island. So it was a Catholic church. So it says the ruins of the church are reported to have existed on the island until 1774. So then it became Fort Mitchell in that time period. So in the 1700s, they turned it into a fort, and then it became a prison, and it held over 2,300 prisoners. It was the largest prison in the world at that time. And there's never been a larger prison in Ireland or Britain before this or after it. So its strategic location within the Irish harbor benefited a good defense and prison purpose. So it became a full-scale prison in 1847 at the height of the Great Famine. It was used as a depot, and it was also for the purpose of housing prisoners before they were deported to Australia. So this was a troubled time then, and not just for Ireland, but for England and other areas in the UK. And there was also an extreme period of poverty, so lots of crime, of course, always is generated when people can't eat or survive, because people have to feed themselves and feed their families. So we end up with a lot of probably what we would consider today pretty minor crimes like theft, right? Mm-hmm. Stealing a
was it a debtor's prison as well?
But this is that time period, right? We have the potato famine, we have people starving, and so people may be stealing food, and so they end up being shipped off to either the colonies, as in AKA America, or they were sent down to Australia. So then this was a location where they were housing these people. It was known as, or it is known now, or at some point, as Ireland's Alcatraz. So making that comparison to Alcatraz.
That's everything.
Yeah, Alcatraz prison off the coast of California there. And it closed.
I've always wanted to visit Alcatraz. There's something about it.
I've never been. My mom went when she was down there.
I've seen the Alcatraz movies.
Yeah, so
I'm sure Ian has.
To 1883, thousands of people had horrible experiences of being imprisoned in this location. Some inmates had committed serious, gruesome crimes. Most of Spike Island's inhabitants were minor crimes, as I said, like stealing, especially during the famine. The prison was closed. The island was returned as a military base again. So it went back to being a military base. Queen Victoria first set foot in Ireland in 1849, and for 70 years, the town in her honor was known as Queenston. Wow, because we know how that goes too. In 1916, the facility was again used as a prison, and with the capture of Odd's crew, it was designed and disguised as a German ship holding guns to be used in the Rising. They were held there prior to being transferred to England. And after the establishment of the Irish Free State, I can't even talk today, the Irish Free State, the Royal Navy returned control of the territory. It had it until 1938, and then it was handed back to Ireland, remaining as a military base and prison under Irish rule at that time. And it became one of the most, I guess it kind of gained more notoriety in 1985 when it was the location of the prison riots. So we have all of this history. The prison finally closes its doors in 2004. And today,
that's not that long ago, huh?
No, it's not really. I mean, that's what, 16 years ago. It's now a tourist destination, of course, and it's also known to be quite haunted. So let's look at, does anybody have anything else that they'd like to interject about the history of it? Did I miss anything? Have I was trying to...
No, I think you were spot on with the history. I think that was perfect.
That very good.
Yeah, so I think I covered all of that. So let's talk about all the hauntings, because there seems to be quite a number of different stories that are located with this.
I guess the island has been a popular location for paranormal teams doing, those TV show paranormal teams, particularly in England.
Right.
It is, but it's also a popular destination just for tourists.
Yes.
Just like Alcatraz Island is in.
So how did you guys?
San Francisco.
How did you have you been there? Has anybody been there, or how do you know of it?
Never been to Spike Island. Ian discovered it when he
right, okay.
Yeah, when we were doing our St. Patrick's Day show. It's just one of the topics that I stumbled across when I was doing my research.
Yeah, and it looks like such a fascinating place. I mean, Alcatraz was strictly built as a prison. I don't believe it was ever anything else, and it's not particularly old, Alcatraz, either, right? I mean,
well, Alcatraz.
So Alcatraz wasn't a military fortress at any point, or?
It was in the beginning. There was something to do with the American Civil War, I believe.
Yeah, but again, that's not that old, right? In the grand scheme of things, we're not going back to the 600 and something.
No.
Right.
So, I mean,
regardless, it still carries that atmosphere and that aura of a military presence, of something there. And they all seem to have very similar things in common, don't they? Where there was a lot of emotional distress, a lot of energy in those places that seem to cause paranormal activity.
Right. And just to note, Alcatraz actually was a prison from 1934 to 1963.
Okay.
So it really didn't have a long history of...
I think Alcatraz had Al Capone in it, didn't it?
Yes.
Yes, he was there for probably right in the very early times that Alcatraz opened up. So it's, like I said, Alcatraz, while it has a history, it doesn't have a history like this location, right? I mean, it just doesn't have that longevity of all the different things. I mean, first we have a monastery, then we have a Catholic church, and then we have a military fort, and then we have a prison, and then it reverts back to a fort, essentially a military base. Then it goes back to a prison. And it's last, that's a long time, because that's, let me just double check it again, because I want to get the correct date there for it. But okay, so we're talking, 6, 7, it's almost 1,000 years of history on Spike Island.
Wow. That's crazy. That's I think maybe Spike Island has that too.
But it's going to have that ominous energy attached to it. Whereas Spike Island, to me, would seem like it's probably an interesting location because prior to the monastery being there, I suspect that people have been inhabiting it for a while. Like, it looks like a really great location, possibly even Iron Age, Bronze Age, earlier peoples were living on the island. And then we have the monastery, which of course, as we know, I mean, monasteries are generally quite, introverted, right? So
yes,
you're not going to get a lot of exterior people traveling there, maybe as pilgrimages or people coming to the monastery for, reasons of pilgrimage, to maybe study or to spend time in solitude. But it would have had a much different energy when it was a monastery than certainly when it became a fort or was a prison. And then we have the church as well, which I guess when the monastery finally closed up shop, the church was there. So it's an interesting location because you have to think, like, it's an island. So if you wanted to go to the church there, you would have had to take a boat over to get there. So I find it like an odd spot for a church. Like, I get it for a monastery because it's kind of secluded, but a church is really odd to me. Like, placing a church there, I'm not really understanding that. And I guess it would have to be more, I'd have to go back and do a lot more historical research to see. I believe it's probably just so that they could retain possession of the location in a sense. Right, that the church maintain their.
Well, according to the the archaeology magazine, they're talking about Spike Island. They said millions were forced to flee to Spike Island during the Great Famine.
Yes.
So maybe that's why the church was there, for them, because of course they're quite religious.
Because the church was built in the Middle Ages in the
I see.
And I mean, the famine was the middle of the Victorian era, right? The potato famine. So we have a period of time where, and millions of people, like, it's not a big place. So I'm not even sure how you would get, I mean, people fled and perhaps they fled, but to go to Spike Island, I think it was because of the theft and the minor, that they ended up in the prison on Spike Island, as opposed to actually going there for any other reason, right? People were in.
Well, I had heard that some of the Irish were there partly to flee to Australia or the Caribbean.
Yes, but those were people that were actually put on ships and forced. They weren't actually fleeing there because they wanted to. Those were penal colonies.
Gotcha.
They were moving prisoners from Spike Island to Australia, right? Because Australia was a penal colony. I mean, that's what it was started for, when they first discovered that, this is a great place to send lots and lots and lots of criminals so that we don't have to deal with them back home. And so that's what they did.
Sorry.
You have to think about, all of the circumstances of this location. And so the energy, as I say, with going from a monastery to, whatever the church was using it for at the time, it very well could have still been a type of monastery with a new church in there, perhaps. But they built an actual church. And then we get to the military, but we have the prison and we have a fort and then we have a prison. So it was a fort prior to, and from the sounds of it, and Ian, I don't know if you have in this, was it a British fort or was it